Hi, everybody. It's me. I feel like I'm so close to the camera today. Oh, well, whatever. It's so good to see y'all. I took a couple of days and honestly just kind of took a nap. But like a bad penny, I always pop back up, always turn back up. So here I am again. Oh, you guys, today's story, it's a really somber day for all of us in the US especially, but honestly for the entire world. Because even though the events of September 11th happened on our soil, and yes, we were the main target, it affected everybody. It affected the whole world. If this could happen here, the strongest nation on earth, basically, no one was safe. And we all knew it, all at the same time, that same day. Everybody knew it. Our world changed. For years as a nation, we honestly were more united than we ever were before and have been since. And I really kind of miss that. I wouldn't want to have to go through another terrorist attack to get it. But I wish sometimes people would just remember how we were so united back then. We went through a Republican presidency and a Democrat presidency, and it didn't matter. We were all just one nation. We agreed to disagree and went on with our lives and just supported each other. And I so miss that. But I don't miss the being so terrorized. I'm going to jump in and just say hi to my chat really quick. And then I have a few 9/11 facts that I'm going to share with you guys before we bring on our guests. We've got the amazing George Massey and the absolutely amazing and beautiful Brooke Elliott. They were both witness to the event, and so I wanted to have them on here. And another thing, y'all, is I do have a link in the chat that if you've got a story or you want to share your memories of it or your thoughts on it and everything, use that link and you can pop into the backstage and I'll bring you on stage with us. Now, be nice. Don't come on here trying to act ugly and get on stage because that's just not cool, especially not today. So any trolls out there, just, see yourself out because not today. There's a trigger warning for obvious reasons. So anyway, I'm going to get started with my chat. I don't know if y'all can see this or not, but I tried to leave a message on here when I first came in and it says YouTube rejected your comment. This usually means they think it's spam. Try changing it a bit. It was from me. You would think I could leave a message in my own chat. But there is there's the link. It is up at the top. And I can get my amazing mods to list that every once in a while. We will have a zero policy on trolls today. And don't forget about that trigger warning. Mischief Managed, it is so good to see you. I have missed you the last couple of days. Susan P., I see you made it. I hope you're having a good time. Joe McCoyne, always, always, always so good to see you. Eileen Bradley, also very good to see you. Yeah, my hair's a little different today, isn't it? It's more, I don't know, it's kind of crazy. So anyway, we have a small chat so far today. Constance June just popped in. We'll try to keep track of who all's here. And I've got just a little bit of just kind of a refresh your memory on some of the facts. And then we're going to bring our guests in and have them tell their stories. And again, if you all have stories that you want to tell, we absolutely welcome that too. So I'm going to get started, okay? On September 11th, 2001, at 8:45 a.m., a clear, beautiful late summer morning, an American Boeing 730 or 767, get the plane right, loaded with 20,000 gallons of jet fuel crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. And thus it started. Just really don't like how I'm sitting there. That's better. Okay. The impact left a gaping, burning hole near the 93rd and 99th floors of the 110-story skyscraper, instantly killing all on board, hundreds in the building, and trapping more that were on the higher floors. It was just awful. Miss Sunrise Dawn, Lisa Kelson, it's good to see you guys too. Evacuation of both towers immediately started, and television cameras broadcast live images of what was at first thought to be a freak accident. Many thought it was a Cessna, just not realizing that it was a huge jet full of passengers and crew. I think that it was easier to think that it was a Cessna because that's just like it was flying so low and everything that I think that people just didn't immediately think jet. So, anyway, 18 minutes after the first plane hit, a second Boeing 767 United Airlines Flight 175 appeared in the skyline. It turned sharply to the left towards the World Trade Center and sliced into the South Tower between the 77th and 85th floors. Again, killing everybody on board and several people in the building. It caused a massive explosion that showered burning debris over surrounding buildings and the streets below. America was under attack. The hijackers were Islamic terrorists from Saudi Arabia and several other Arab nations, financed by Al Qaeda, founded by Osama bin Laden, and they were acting allegedly in retaliation for America's support of Israel, its involvement in the Persian Gulf War, and its continued presence in the Middle East. I don't believe any of it. I think it was just they hate us and they were looking for an excuse. They found it, I guess. Some of the 19 terrorists had lived in the United States for more than a year and had taken flight lessons at American commercial flight schools. Others came to the U.S. months before the attack. They were the muscle of the operation. The others came here to learn how to fly. And then the ones that came later were just here for muscle. Some learned to fly at Oklahoma State University here in Oklahoma, close to where I live. I go there not to the kind of to the college because it's all over town, but I go there almost every week. We go at least every other week. We go to Stillwater. It's my favorite town to go to. In fact, y'all, before my mother died, she worked at an establishment and at least one of the terrorists came in there. After the attacks, when the photos of the men were made public, Mom immediately recognized one man. She recalled their whole conversation, a lot of which centered on him taking flying lessons at OSU. I can remember her mentioning the three men that came in and the conversation that they had had. This was before before 9/11. Anyway, I can remember her talking about it and talking about these men that came in, and the one did most of the talking. He had better English, and he was talking to her about that he was taking flight lessons in at OSU, and then he was going to go on to learn how to fly the bigger planes. So he was still, I mean, this was probably a year before the terrorist attack. So something like that. I can't remember exactly, my chemo brain, and then it's been how many years. So anyway, she was just really, I mean, like I was there when she saw the pictures and she goes, I know him. I know this one. He came in the store. I think that the memory of their conversation and how kind and sweet and attractive that she thought he was, and him wishing him or her wishing him luck with his studies. It it really bothered her for her whole life. She never forgot it. She died not even 2 years ago, and it still bothered her to this, to that day that she had been kind to him and wished him luck in what turned out to be this horrific terrorist thing. So it kind of made her sick. I'm sure you can kind of imagine. So let's speed through a few facts real quick so that we can get to our guests, y'all. At 9:45, American Airlines Flight 77 circled over downtown Washington, D.C. before crashing into the west side of the Pentagon. 125 military and 64 people on board the airliner were killed in the crash and the inferno it caused. United Flight 93 was hijacked about 40 minutes after leaving Newark in New Jersey. Passengers had heard about the events in New York and Washington, so when the hijackers took over the plane, they knew, we're not going home. We're not circling back to the airport like the hijackers claimed. You know, they knew that they were going to crash it into something. And then they kind of assumed that it might be the White House. So they were really nervous about that. Some of the passengers and flight attendants planned an insurrection. Many passengers used their cell phones to call their loved ones to say goodbye. And we've had several recordings of those phone calls that are just heartbreaking. They just absolutely will break your heart. Thomas Burnett Jr. told his wife, I know that we're all going to die. There's 3 of us who are going to do something about it. And then he said, I love you, honey. I imagine that's a message that she'll never delete. Todd Beamer was heard saying in the background on somebody's open line, are you guys ready? And then let's roll. $2,996 people, including the 19 terrorists, were killed. Citizens from 78 countries died in New York and Washington and Pennsylvania. Osama bin Laden remained at large, hiding like a little coward until May 2nd of 2011. So he didn't get to hide long. I mean, not in the grand scheme of things. When he was tracked down and he was killed by U.S. forces in a hideout in Abbottabad, I'm not good with names, Pakistan. In June of 2011, President Barack Obama announced the beginning of large-scale troop withdrawals from Afghanistan. It took until August of 2021 for all U.S. troops to withdraw. And that was an event that started, I think, like really causing the divide in the country. People that didn't like Obama were against the withdrawal. Even people that did like him were against it, and vice versa. Some people that liked him or didn't like him were for it. So it really did kind of really divide us, though, and which is sad. It was the start. There's so much more to tell, but I want to talk to my guests. I want to talk to George and Brooke and welcome them both back to my channel because they have been my 2 people that I've had on in the past. I'm excited to hear their stories, and if any of you want to jump on, there is that link. Remember, it's at the top of the chat, or my mods can repost it anytime if you need it. And just come on and talk if you want to talk. Yeah, I mean, whether you were there or not, if you just have something that you want to say or your impressions of it or, just whatever. We're just here to talk. I'm not going to do an interview. I'm just going to talk to my friends. and your friends, and we're just going to see what they saw, felt, smelled, all of it. It it's just, I don't know. And we might go over our normal hour because I'm already 15 minutes in and haven't even brought my guests on. So I warned Mischief Managed that we might go over a little bit so she wouldn't knock me off. So I'm gonna invite my friends and your friends, Brooke and George, back to the screen. There's Brooke and there's George. Hi.
Right.
Good to
Right.
see you. I was glad to see you. We've got some.
It's always good to see you.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start, guys. This one has just got me so, like, I don't know, just tore up. It's just such a somber day. I've been thinking about it all day, crying about it and everything. But I want to hear your stories. I'm going to start with Brooke. Kind of tell me the background on where you were or why you were there,
Mhm.
and then we'll go to George and he can tell that part, and then we'll go from there. We'll kind of go bounce back and forth, but we'll kind of set the stage of why y'all were there and where you were at, if that's okay with you. So,
Sure.
okay, Brooke, you go first.
So
Ladies first.
I was I was at college. I'm just a few hours away from the city, so I wasn't within the city. I was outside the city in my second week of college, and I was literally waking up late at like 7:30 in the morning, running to environmental science course, and in my pajamas because I was in college.
College,
And as
yeah.
I'm running, yeah, I got all dressed, got all ready, left my dorm, and as I'm heading to course, all of a sudden, like I heard a bunch of people saying, "Hey, hey, hey!" Like people were dropping their books and were running into the main hall in the because there's like I don't know 12 buildings outside in the college, so I just happened to follow them because I want to know what the heck's going on, and
Yeah.
everybody was just standing in a main hall, and there's a big TV in the main hall, and we were watching, and there was smoke coming out of a tower. And then all of a sudden, we saw a second one hit. Everybody freaked out because our power glitched out, and I mean, at that age, I didn't have a cell phone, so I was
Yeah.
trying to use our landlines in college, and I couldn't get through. Every time I picked up the phone, you just got like screechy noises, and there was
Yeah.
no phone, there was no way to communicate. People were screaming because they couldn't get through. I mean, you're in college in New York. You're there with all bunch of New Yorkers. Like I literally just held hands with whoever was next to me because I really thought, oh my God, we're gonna be killed. What the
Mhm.
heck is going on? Like we
I
were
did
scared. We
too.
couldn't get a hold of anybody.
I
Right.
thought that they
I
would
was
come
18.
in with
It was the
bombs
first
and
time being by
mix.
myself. Right. That's what we thought. We all
Yeah.
were like, oh my God, what do we do? I mean, um, it was you couldn't. I don't know how to explain it. Like it felt like it was in slow motion. At least for me, it was, anyways. Because I couldn't understand what was going on. At first, I
Yeah.
thought, oh my God, somebody got hurt. Look at there's a flight. Oh my God, which tower is that? Because we all have family and friends there. We're New Yorkers. But then as soon as the second one hit and everything went glitchy, like everything, your
Yeah.
power goes out. We're school, so it was like,
And back
and then
then.
it was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was chaos. It was absolute chaos on campus because what are we supposed to do? We're kids,
Yeah.
literally kids, first time in the world. So I was like, oh my goodness, this can't be good.
So
I just personally,
I want to
yeah.
ask George his perspective of it, what happened, because yours as a college student is going to be different from his as a full grown adult.
Yep.
So I want to see, George, what happened? What did you see? And,
Well, there's a few points I need to talk about before.
that's fine.
We had so my wife had worked in the World Trade Center the whole time I'd known her up to that point, right? So she was in the bombing in '93, and we lived in Battery Park City, which was just across the West Side Highway. It was like a 5-minute walk to the World Trade Center. And when the 93 bombing happened, you know, I got wind of it at work, and I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? You know, she's there. And I was going to go look for her, but there's thousands of people on the street. So I figured I'm just going to go home, which is 5 minutes from the World Trade Center, and I'll wait for her there. Well, it took her 5 hours to get home that day, because at that time there was no emergency lighting in the stairwell. They were walking down in pitch black darkness, and smoke was rising from the basement where the bomb occurred, right? The bombing with the truck. So anyway, so push that aside, 5 hours to get out of the building. We had moved to New Jersey in the January of 2001. So we were just settling into our new home, first time homeowners, whatever. And we were late for work that day. We missed our bus. We used to get a commuter bus in together. We only had one car between us because we were just settling in and finding our feet. And we had one cell phone and one car between us back then. So we were dependent on each other for getting to and we had to travel together to go to work and from work to get to the bus. So we're 20 minutes late. We weren't 20 minutes late. She was like 5 minutes late, and we missed our bus. So we ended up on a bus 20 minutes later. Mm-hmm. So we arrived the bus came through the Holland Tunnel. I don't know if you know the geography, but the Holland Tunnel is downtown, runs into Canal Street, which is the border, the crossover from downtown to Soho and Greenwich Village and everything else. So we come through the tunnel. We're 20 minutes late for work. We arrive on the scene. As we're getting closer to the World Trade Center, people start reacting because the first plane has already hit. And my wife gets upset and she said, "Oh my God, what's going on? I'm scared." I'm like, "Well, don't worry." I said, because she would get off the bus. I would go 2 stops further on. I worked on the other side of the Manhattan at that time, on Wall Street. So she would get off her bus normally. I would stay on the bus, and I said, "Well, I'll get off the bus with you, and I'll make sure you get into work. And if you can't get into work, you come to my office, right?" So we're walking down, I think it was West Broadway, from the bus. We're looking up, everyone's looking up. The first tower had gaping holes in it, and there was smoke billowing. Thank God we didn't see anyone jump. A lot of people I know that were there saw people jumping. And you guys all saw that on the news, so you had a much better take on what was going on in real time. So anyway, we're walking towards and we're looking at, she worked in the South Tower. It was never ever referred to as the North and South Tower until that day. It was World Trade Center 1 and World Trade Center 2. Yeah. She worked in 2, on the 50th floor. So right around the middle, right? So we're walking towards the building, and all of a sudden we don't know what happened, but we just see the building just explode right in the middle. To us, it looked like it was in the middle, right? Because we're looking down the perspective. Turns out, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's our entire company just been wiped out. We didn't know that a plane had hit the building. We had no idea what was going on. As we're walking down and I'm looking at the First Trade Center, I'm thinking, oh, it's a mechanical explosion or something that's gone on with the mechanicals of the building. Something's exploded. So we're walking down. I said, well, if you can't get in, I'll walk you to the door. If you can't get in, if they've shut the door or whatever, I said, come over to my office and we'll work out how to get you home. So we're walking towards the building. The building explodes. I push her into a doorway to get away from everything flying at us. And then, obviously, like oh shit, we have to get out of here quick. So we make our way across to the other side of it's very narrow. Manhattan's very narrow at the bottom, in the Wall Street area. So we'll make our way over to my office. There's two guys, black guy and a white guy, that's standing on the corner, and the white guy's screaming at the black guy, shut your mouth, shut your mouth. And the black guy's saying, I'm telling you, I saw two planes. There were two planes. And the white guy goes, there's no way in hell there were two planes that hit that building, that hit the building. He says, you're making shit up and you're scaring people. Shut
Yeah.
your mouth. So that was the first, like, oh, crap. So what, we're, you know, that was the first inkling we had that there were planes involved, and it was a targeted attack. Get into my office. I throw my wife into a spare office, closed office. I said, call your mother and let her know that you're all right. So she did that. Her mother was watching it on TV and saw the planes hit the building. She thought the same thing, that my wife would have been in the office at the time if we hadn't been that 5 minutes late. Everything happens for a reason, right? So get into my office. My boss says, I said to my boss, I'm going to take my wife home. He says, I walk into his private office and he's on the speakerphone with his wife, and she's screaming at him, get them out of there. You got to shut up shop and send them home. And he's going, no way. This is a regular work day. We're staying. She's screaming at him, you idiot, get them out.
Yeah.
This isn't a joke. Get them out. And he's like, no way. And I walked in and I'm listening to this. And I said, listen, I'm going. I said, I don't care what you do. You want to fire me? You want to dock my wages? I said, I'm out of here. My wife's in the just across the hall. I said, I've got to get her home. Oh, no, just take her out, get her a cup of tea, calm her down, and then come back. I'm like, I ain't coming back today. I said, all right. So when I did go and get her a cup of tea, we sat in a little park area, went to Starbucks, got a cup of tea, sat in this little park area trying to figure out what we're going to do, because there had been some kind of terrorist threat a year or two before, and they closed down all the tunnels. So to New Jersey, and I thought, well, there's no way I'm getting back through the tunnels, like on the bus or anything. So we planned we were going to walk down to the tip of Manhattan to Battery Park, get on the Staten Island ferry, go over there. Her mum lives there, and her mum could drive us to Jersey. So we had that worked out. As we're standing there drinking our tea, the street in front of us, we're looking down Pine Street, which runs horizontally across Manhattan, and it just fills with rubble and it starts rushing towards us. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, by this time we knew that people had been online. They had looked up, been on CNN website, knew we were under attack. There was something big going on. And when this rubble starts coming towards me, in my head, I'm thinking they're blowing up the buildings along, like a domino effect.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be our turn in like 10 seconds. We're going to get blown up. So
you were kind of feeling like how Brooke was, like this is just the beginning.
Yeah, because it was right in front of me. The rubble was coming, But we were right on the East River, where the Brooklyn Bridge is, right near there, South Street Seaport. And there were some little ferry boats. We got on the very last ferry boat to New Jersey. What I had seen, what I didn't realize at the time, it was the first tower collapsing. So we're on the ferry boat, and it's wide, and we're sitting in the middle, and everyone's got life jackets on. And then We couldn't see out the windows because but anyone standing near the windows would start screaming, and I'm like, my wife's clinging to me. I'm like, you got to let me go. I've got to go look out the window. I've got to see what's happening out there. I want to know what we're in for. So I go over to the window and I see the second tower pancaking. That was her building, right? And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'd worked at the same company as her and worked in the World Trade Center and left a year or so. I left in 99. But anyway, so I'm thinking 93, those stairwells were jam-packed with people. I'm like, oh my God, everyone we know is dead.
Yeah.
There's, because the building's collapsed. And I go back to my wife and she yells at me, I am never going back in there. I never wanted to go back after 93. I'm not going back. I said, you don't have to go back.
You don't have to worry about that.
There's nothing to go back to. And she's like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? I said, the buildings have gone, both of them. They're gone. And she's like, I don't get it. I don't understand. What are you saying? I said, the buildings have just collapsed. Anyway, we get off in Hoboken. This is all around, I think, well, it was started at 8:45, I think, was the first plane. So we're around 10 o'clock now, 10 a.m. maybe, or maybe earlier than that. It took us till 5 p.m. to get back to our home, which is like a 40-minute ride from Hoboken, New Jersey. Because when we got there, I was expecting them to send out buses for everyone that was evacuating out of New York. Nothing, they didn't do anything. So we had to make our own way on the little local buses. We found our way eventually to Newark, Penn Station in Newark, and we ended up on a train back to where we live. But took us hours and hours and hours, and we're covered in dust.
I can imagine.
And we got to Newark Station at Newark Penn Station, and they say to us, if you're at the World Trade Center, you've got to go over here, blah, 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 to get fumigators. I can't remember what word they use now. He said, to be decontaminated.
Decontaminated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does that mean? He said, they hose you down with a fire hose. I said, screw that. And I'm like, I'll stay, full of dust. I'm not going to stand there. It was.
And get hit with the fire. Oh,
and
man.
Get drenched and have to walk, get home in soaking wet clothes. I was like, no, I'll live with the dust. I'm good. But then, so that was my escape story. We got out. Luckily, we were together. If under normal circumstances, we wouldn't have been. We would have been separated.
Everything worked out perfect. I mean for the two of you to be together.
No one in her firm to be. They were on the 50th to 54. They had 4 floors: 50, 51, 52, 53, 54. 5 floors, I guess. Yeah. In that building, not one of them were hurt, but they had a subsidiary company. Like 100 in the hundreds, 101, I think, or something in the first tower. And they were all ex-co-workers of my wife, and not one of them survived. I had interviewed for a job in July of that year with a company on I think that was the 101st floor of this North Tower. And they wanted me to take the job, and I refused. I turned it down because I didn't want, it wasn't my cup of tea. And I've never turned down a job offer before, but I did.
That's something.
And
even then, everything was working out.
If I had accepted, I wouldn't have survived. Right? No one in that firm survived. So things happen for a reason. But she survived 2. I always say she survived 2 Al Qaeda attacks. And then she was killed by an incompetent doctor in the American healthcare system. A lazy doctor. She would still be here today. She was a resilient woman, but they finally got to her.
So Brooke, Okay, so you're at your college, you're holding hands with your college mates, you know.
Anybody was
What
near me,
happened
right?
then? What happened then? What did you go home? Did you know
No,
what did you do?
you couldn't leave. You had no
Yeah.
way to communicate with anybody. We had to wait till the phones were on. We all kind of just were like seeing who had a working cell phone and who could get a line out. And first ones to serve was like my roommate was from um, Ardsley. Do you know? I don't know if you know where that is, George, but
I
like right
do.
outside the city. Um,
Really.
okay. Well, either way, we'd go through the Lincoln Tunnel to get back and forth in and out of the city from there, from her
Right.
house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not like I wanted her to talk because her family was in there. Her friends worked in the tower, in the first tower. Um, it was more like just communication. We were all just trying to make sure that each of us, whoever had somebody in the tower, got a phone first. And we just continued to take turns because luckily enough, my family's further enough away from the city. I
Yeah.
didn't have to worry about them. But I just wasn't sure because I just thought any big building, and I was at a college. So I didn't know what they were going to attack. And we had family members that were, were in government official business. So I'm thinking my family works for Albany. Could that be next? Could that, we didn't, it was like, I don't know how to explain it. Like people were screaming, crying, or you were in shock. Like everybody had the same look of like,
Yeah.
what do we do?
I
If
think
that
that
makes
that's
any
how
sense.
everybody was, even the ones that weren't there, because I know that for days and days afterwards, just whenever I would go out and about, and I mean, and I'm in Oklahoma, y'all. I'm not, anywhere. I was not. I had a cousin that her husband was in the World Trade Center. He was in the tower too, and did not make it. Um, but I didn't know him. It's just, a family member, but I didn't know him. So, but I mean, I'm here, and yet even here in Oklahoma, it was like we were all like the walking wounded. Like we're just walking around, we're doing our normal stuff, going to the grocery store, that kind of stuff, going to work, whatever. But everybody just looked pale and kind of, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Everybody just was scared. There was just a
Yeah.
fear, and we weren't like busting out bawling and screaming and all that anymore. But it was so terrifying here that I cannot imagine how you all felt. I cannot even imagine.
Everyone says to me, being that close to it, weren't you afraid? And, you must have been terrified. I'm like, no, not really. I said, because it was all so surreal. And
Yeah.
we were in the dark on the ground. You guys watching it on TV at home, you knew far more about what was happening than we
Mhm.
did. Um,
That always happens.
because you had reports coming in, and we were just relying on our own, what we saw with our own eyes, and we didn't see
Mhm.
everything. Like we didn't even know that planes were involved till later, right? And well, there was another point I wanted to make. Yeah, it felt like I was on a movie set, and we were extras on a disaster movie. It was so surreal, and you just imagine somebody would say, cut, resume positions,
Yeah.
and go back and do it again. I was like, it just didn't seem real life to me at the time. It was just like so surreal that your adrenaline is pumping because your fight or flight is kicking in. So yeah, there was no time to be afraid or worried, or it was just get the hell out and stay laser focused on getting out, getting away from it.
Right. We couldn't answer simple questions. We couldn't answer what was going on. We couldn't answer questions that we wanted, but we were all together going, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if this is, it feels like is this an attack? And we weren't sure. At first, we just thought it was an accident, right? I mean, that's basically what your first thought is.
Yeah.
Oh my
Right.
goodness, a plane just went in. Then the second thought is, oh my God, another plane went in. And then that's when, I mean, that's where you're like, is this real? Is this a TV joke? Is this like War of the Worlds? Like, I have
think
no idea.
once I'd heard, because I heard when I was in my office that the Pentagon has been hit.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, this is serious. This is a
Yeah.
full-blown attack. And that's when I went outside for the cup of tea, and I saw the rubble coming, and thinking they're blowing up the building, you know, a domino type effect.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was on the ferry and I heard all the screaming, like, I have to see what we're in for. In my head, I imagined I would look out the window and there'd be like fighter jets just
Yeah.
firing on Lower Manhattan or something.
That's what I expected too.
Like, just you didn't know what to expect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was all like being part of some big Hollywood, being an extra in a Hollywood blockbuster or something was just.
So did you have like a delayed reaction to it? I mean, like days later, did it hit you the significance of what you had been with, or?
I mean, I was just glued to the TV for about 2 days, and then it got to a point where I'm like, I can't watch this. It was just footage of the towers coming, being hit, coming down.
Oh, I know.
And I'm like, I was just numb, I guess. Like, oh shit, I've got to try and understand what's happened here. And then after like I think a day or 2 days, maybe a day, I'm like, it's just I can't be watching this anymore. And I didn't like I never went back. We were back in work. I was downtown, and we'd have to walk past the site. We were back on the following Monday. It happened on a Tuesday, and we were back on the following Monday.
That is bizarre.
And when you were walking downtown, there was this dust like floating in the air, just constant. And it was when it hit your skin and you wiped it was oily, like slimy dust. And everyone said, "Oh no, it's the oil. It's the oil." That from the jet planes. I'm going, yeah, okay, whatever. Just was weird. Then other people were saying there were 3,000 pulverized bodies mixed in with that dust. And that's the oily tech thing that you were feeling on your skin. And that was super creepy to think of that, right? But yeah. I mean,
I know when they got in and were digging, trying to find any survivors, and then just on a recovery mission at some point, I just kept thinking about that some of that ash and everything was incinerated bodies. It was like a giant
pulverized bodies, yeah.
Yeah. I just
yeah.
The bucket brigade was probably the hardest. I would say probably the harder of the jobs to do, because I mean, we had people coming from all over, from even up in my hometown. We sent down fire trucks, and whoever could volunteer could go down. It was just, that was the job, like go down. We wanted to help each other. So we had people coming from all over the place. I mean, I just remember the buckets, the white buckets that would come out, and then they would be gray. And then, I mean, it's the craziest. It was, and I was there exactly 1 month before on my senior trip. We went down there because I wanted to go see some Broadway plays. That was that picture you put up. That's my senior class. We were just there August 11th through the 13th to go watch Broadway plays. And we had set it up that way because we were all leaving for college at the end of the month. So
I was looking over at the chat, and Lisa Kelson says, "Hi, my sweet Susie. I'm so happy that you're doing this today. I asked my high school junior what they covered about 9/11 today, and he said, 'Mom, we stopped talking about 9/11 a few years ago.'" I just think that is so sad. I don't think we should ever stop talking about it. I
No,
I
that
remember
turned my
on
trajectory.
yeah.
My journey.
I remember on the day, on the ferry, I'm thinking, I think the movie Titanic has just come out, right? A few years before, or whatever, maybe. I don't know. I can't remember. But I
Close.
thought, what?
It was
Um,
close. A couple years before.
yeah, and I just remember thinking to myself, wow, you know, I imagined in my head when I saw the towers come down, the casualties were going to be in the tens of thousands, 20,000, 30,000. But I'm thinking to myself, well, I think 1,200 people died on the Titanic, and they're still talking about it 100 years later. Like
Exactly.
this is history. I'm witnessing history right here. That was, yeah, like one of the thoughts that ran through my head, as well as a lot of others. But for
Yeah.
me, the trauma and the anxiety didn't kick in. I think it was more the follow up. I don't know if you remember at the time, but there was, we were under constant fear of anthrax attacks. There were anthrax letters going out to Congress, to the mayor of New York, and it was on the
Yep.
news 24/7. And you're like, holy shit, like, are we gonna be overwhelmed with anthrax now? And when is the next shoe gonna drop? I think that was the anxiety part for me, was like, what's coming next? Because there was so much uncertainty
Yeah.
about what had happened to us and what was going to happen to us. Yeah, so the day itself, I didn't. I think it affected my wife far more than it did me, but I kind of brushed it off and said, okay, this happened and I survived and I've got a life to look forward to, but I think the 93 bombing really, really freaked her, like took a big toll on her. And then
Imagine.
that, because she was in the building and it was, a scary experience trying to get out of the building. That's what I wanted to say. So if it hadn't been for the 93 bombing, 2001 would have been far worse, because as a result of 93, they were forced to put in emergency lighting, and they got out of that building within 20 minutes, down 50 flights of stairs. If 93 hadn't happened and they didn't have that emergency lighting, those stairwells would have been packed, and it would have been tens of thousands of people that would have been pulverized that day.
I can't imagine the people coming down those stairs, because when we were in Houston when I went for my cancer treatment to MD Anderson, we were, I think, on the like the 11th floor or something. We weren't high, but no, 13th, I think. No, 14th floor. 14th floor. And somebody as a joke, they did a fire alarm. And we pretty much assumed that it was a joke. But here I was, sick as a dog, with cancer and chemo and all this stuff. And I had to come down all those 14 floors in the stairway. And it was so dark and so packed because they didn't have security. Like, they didn't have lights. They didn't have emergency lights in there. And so it was scary and exhausting. And that is nothing compared to what was going on with the World Trade Center. Like, we pretty much knew that it was a fake, I mean, we were hurrying because you just never know 100%, but hurrying as much as I could. I kept telling people to go around me because I moved so slow, I was so sick. And so when it was happening, I kept thinking about those people. When we were going down the stairs in Houston, I was thinking about the people in the World Trade Center and having to go down all those flights of stairs and just.
I don't know if do you remember the footage of the 93 bombing as people were coming out, they were black around
Yeah.
their mouths and noses because smoke was billowing up. And my wife said, we were crawling out, inching our way down in the dark for 5 hours, and the smoke was coming up, and we didn't know what we were walking into.
Yeah.
If we were walking into a fire or, but we had no choice but to keep going. And we couldn't see in front of our noses, so everyone's, feeling their way down. Thousands of people. And that was another early morning attack, if I remember. The building was filled up pretty much. I think the population was about 30,000, if I'm maybe 15 each, or maybe it was 30,000 each. I don't remember, but to have only those 5 people that died in 93 saved an awful lot of lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was also, another thing I thought about was just the absolute terror and desperation and bravery and everything that it had to have taken for the ones that jumped.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot imagine.
Right.
But I do believe that it had to have taken a degree of bravery, just because I don't know that I would be brave enough to jump out of a 2-story building if it was on fire, and much less. And I mean, they knew they weren't going to make it. They knew with that kind of fall, they weren't going to make it.
Yeah.
But just the thought that that was the better way to go is just,
well, yeah. I
it's
mean,
just
I don't
all so
know.
horrific.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Lisa Kelson said that she was visiting her parents who lived in Vegas on that day, and we tried to leave to go home to Utah. Everyone else was trying to leave too. We all thought Vegas would be next, which I remember people talking about, that Vegas would be a good place to hit because of, such a concentration of people and everything. But anyway, we were all scared to death. The freeway and was a parking lot. Took 2 hours to go 5 miles. We turned around and stayed another day, scared to death every second. Wow.
My
I can
wife,
imagine.
all the management team that day were at an off-site meeting in Connecticut at Country Club. So all the senior management weren't there. They had flown in from all over the country, right? So they're watching it on TV. They're watching their building the building they worked in destroyed, and having no clue, the same as anybody else. Imagining that 10 or 20,000 people have been killed, whatever.
Yeah.
And then everyone had to get back home to their own cities, mostly Seattle. We had a big office in Seattle, and there was no way to get back. Because all the air traffic had been suspended, right, for at least a week, I think, if I remember right. I can't. I mean, you know as much as well as I do. I don't. I think it was. I remember being like out and seeing the first plane, and I flinched. After they opened up the airspace again, and every time I was in the city and I saw a plane, for months after, I would be flinching and
I can imagine.
reacting.
I couldn't stand to see a plane flying. We where we live, we're in kind of a flight zone, and so we see a lot of planes that they're going into Tulsa or leaving Tulsa.
Right.
And every time I would see one, even though it wouldn't be that low, I would just feel so scared. I would just have this like absolute just sense of dread. And I thought, holy cow, if I'm feeling like this in Oklahoma, what are they feeling like? We have a little bit of a fear here, though, in Oklahoma, because just like 12 miles from here is what they call the oil crossroads of America or the world. I don't know. But anyway, it's where all the pipelines cross.
Right.
And so if they decided to, that would be a big target.
Don't be
And
giving anyone ideas, Susie.
yeah, I know. Well, people talk about it all the time. Yeah, it is so
It's
scary.
funny
I
because
got to where I
at
wouldn't go to
my
that town. I'm sorry.
yeah, it's okay. It's just weird because at my age group, we weren't trying to be scared. We were all thinking, okay, what do we need to do? We felt
Mhm.
it more of a call to action. Like that's when my
I believe
husband,
that.
ex-husband, joined the military. We were like, how do we need to protect our family? We need to protect ourselves. So I thought maybe that's just the college thing. It was that age group,
I think
We
it's an
were like,
age thing. I think it's an age thing because so many of my daughter Megan, the oldest one, she's about your age. Uh, I think a year and a half younger. But anyway, so many of the boys in her class, because she was like a senior or something, I think. And so many of the boys in her class and the class above her joined the military immediately.
mhm.
And it was just terrifying because all of a sudden all these kids, and it's so weird because like there's these two brothers and she went to prom with one of them and was best friends with both of them. Like just they were all there was this group of kids that were all, like the best of friends. And thank
Mhm.
God both of the boys made it through. They're still kicking. But anyway, the one brother, he flew fighter jets during the war, and then later on he was flying like the cargo ones. And it was so weird because he landed here in Oklahoma in one of those great big planes, and they literally unloaded like multiple Hummers and helicopters and all this stuff. And I don't think that we realize just how huge of an operation it is and how huge those planes and stuff are. But yeah, he started out during the war. He was flying those missions and bombing people and everything. And then his brother was on the ground doing the same thing and almost got shot and everything. And then my son-in-law, um he went before the troops would go places and set up all of their like communication stuff, and then they would all come in, and then like he would, whenever they were leaving, they would leave and he would unhook it, but he would get flown to wherever he was going so that he could have the stuff set up before they got there because they were going by land and they would take him by air and set
Right.
it up again. And so this went on and on and on, but it was just, I agree. I think that your age group really did take it as a call to action.
I think that's
Whereas,
how we seen it.
yeah,
Right.
whereas our age group was just like trying to figure out what the hell to do. And, you know, we were past the age of signing up and going into the military, basically. And so, you know, we had to do other things like the whole Blue Star Mothers and, all that stuff was huge and still is. It's just,
Mhm.
oh, Joe McCoy says this event left us all with a hole in our hearts. Absolutely. It brought us together. We were all in this together. Our common bond was real. You could see Old Glory flying everywhere. We must stay together as one. Absolutely. Um, Marilee said, if you haven't, hold on. That's not what I wanted to do. I will get it right in a minute. If you haven't seen it, check out the documentary Gander Newfoundland Housing, feeding and taking care of folks that had planes diverted. It's uplifting. I remember hearing about that story and how it was just so amazing. People talked about how the people in Newfoundland were just, I can't even talk today. I'm sorry, guys. But anyway, like that, just how amazing they were. Just
There
like
was a
completely,
Broadway musical based on that story, I think.
I think so too.
I remember it because I used to walk through the theatre district on my way to work a few years ago, and I remember seeing that.
I really didn't want to watch anything for a while. It was
Yeah.
probably almost a decade, I would say, before I actually started watching anything.
Oh, I
because I
was
just was
glued to it.
uncomfortable.
I
I
I
was
watched
so
it.
I was involved in military, so
Yeah, absolutely. I had to go to counseling because I wouldn't stop watching it. And even after it was over and we were intensely in the war, when it was, really, we were talking, there was, how many soldiers did we lose overnight, and I would sit and watch it so much that I was like completely obsessed with it, like dangerously so. So we, my mom and dad were like, okay, girl, you're gonna have to quit. But I had so many people that all felt like my kids because they had all been to my house so much. And all of a sudden they were these grown-up men who were over there in one way or another fighting a war. And I was just petrified. Absolutely. We had a Christmas tree that was decorated up for the army because we had, mostly ours were all army. I don't know. I was just crazy. I'm going to
I
check some
would,
of these
yeah, I
out here.
wouldn't go back to the site for. It took me over 10 years. Everyone was raving about the memorial,
Mhm.
the water features, and I said I don't want to go there. They built a museum,
Mhm.
um, and I said no. I said not for me. I said to me it's glorifying, and I just
Yeah, I felt the same
I
way.
thought it looked tacky and this and that, and I had my own opinions. But I eventually went in about 2013 because I had family visiting and they wanted to go, and they didn't really. That was their first time in New York, so I
Mhm.
took them there, and it was, I thought, very moving. It was very
Mhm.
tasteful and serene, beautifully
Yeah.
done. And I looked up, I found that all the names are on each. So they have the big square water
Yeah.
feature things, water gushing down, where in the footprints of the towers. And then they have a brass perimeter with all the names that are punched out of the brass facing. And I found the names of
Mhm.
the people that I knew. It was very, very
Mm.
touching and moving.
I just can't imagine. I cannot imagine seeing their names. Man. Uh, Dusty Soda Dispenser is here. He says, I'm an airline employee it's been quite a mess all day. I want to thank my SPTV community friends for being there for us all day. Thank you all. Absolutely, Dusty. We are here for you. If you want to come on and talk, you can. If you're still here, um, I I imagine that it would be really hard for airline employees. I really do. And there's never a time. We fly a lot normally. We haven't for the last couple of years, but we normally fly several times a year. And there's never a time that I fly that I don't think about it. And not even so much about like dying. Like, I don't think about, like, oh God, if this happened and we died and blah blah blah. I think about it in the past tense. I think about what happened, not what could happen. But it just makes it, you know, all that much more real whenever you're boarding a plane, or if there's any kind of weirdness. And I'm always like looking around trying to look to see if anybody looks like a terrorist. And I mean, what does a terrorist look like, so
Right.
I mean, because
I
we certainly have our own domestic terrorists, and so we don't have to look like a foreigner, quote unquote. It could be anybody. And I mean, this guy that my mom talked to was a very nice looking, very almost nerdy, kind of looking guy. He, very much a college type kid, and or not kid, but young adult. And I would have never I would have never thought he was a terrorist. And he was. I can't remember his name, and I know it, and we've even got the newspaper somewhere. I can see his face as clear as day, but mom even saved the news. She was bothered by it. Like, she was seriously bothered by the fact that she had wished him luck. She's like, "Oh my God, I wish this guy luck, and he killed all these people," you know.
I had to fly Pan Am on a transatlantic flight. I moved to the States in July 88, and I was going back to the UK for my first visit home for Christmas in 88. And the only airline that flew direct from Seattle to London was Pan Am. And it was like within a week or so of Lockerbie. And that was the most the eeriest, most uncomfortable flight I've ever been on. All the cabin crew were just ashen faced because it was. I can't remember the timing of the Lockerbie disaster, but I know it was. I think it was within days of my flight home. Hang on, maybe it wasn't days, maybe it was a couple of weeks. I'm just looking it up now. But yeah, that was my first. December 21st. Okay, and I was flying on December 23rd, I think.
Wow.
To go
That
back
was very close.
Yeah, it was. People were like visibly shaken on that flight. You know, the cabin crew. Well, and it kind of unnerved a lot of the passengers too because they were so visibly upset. Right.
I wouldn't get on a plane for 5 years after that, so I didn't
Well,
get
Yeah,
on
we
a
didn't
plane.
either.
I
We didn't either for
refused.
several. And we were used to flying a lot, and it just, I was like, I cannot make myself do it because, you know, we had children. Well, I mean, they were in high school, but they were still children. And I said, I cannot risk it. You know, I can't risk it. Mischief Managed said, George, that was an amazing account. I'm so glad you were both late that day. Me too. Crafts, Chats, and Catastrophe says, at first we thought it was a tragic accident. Then we realized it was an attack and we didn't know what to expect next. I think that that's how a lot of us felt. I really do.
Yeah.
Joe McCoy, no matter where you were, we all lost. We all felt the pain. We all had to face the horror of what happened. The world was affected. Absolutely. You know, it happened here, but it happened to the world. You know, it, like they said, 78 countries lost people, you know, lost citizens. That's a lot of countries. Whoops. Crafts, Chats, and Catastrophe says, I was living in Virginia by the shipyard. We thought we were a target next. Oh, yeah. Lisa Kelson says, I'm overwhelmed with emotion. I'm going to go watch that documentary now. Yeah, I know. I'm going to sit down and watch it later. I wanted to get past this so I wouldn't be a sniveling mess for this one. So we've got Fiona said, hey, Susie in chat. So glad I'm catching alive again. Missed being able to say hi and join a chat. We missed you too. Sitting in Defense says, hello, all Club Brain Fog room raid. Oh, room raid. Club Brain Fog did a room raid. Glad to see you here, Sitting in Defense. I hope you come back and see us. We, you know, usually talk about Scientology stuff, but obviously we venture off a little bit. Yeah, Mischief Managed what? They're not talking about it in schools. I know. It just makes me sick. Absolutely should be.
Well, there's a project for the New American Century called for. It was the new Pearl Harbor, right?
Mm-hmm.
It changed the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It says, Miss Sunrise Dawn says, I live not far from a nuclear plant, and I remember everyone being afraid that the nuclear plant would be a target. I can only imagine. Crafts, Chats, and Catastrophe said, I'm in a wheelchair. I live on the 6th floor of a one elevator building. I remember stories of folks carrying disabled folks down. Yeah. Max Smith says, I lost a relative from the 9/11 attack. Max Smith said he was a New York Police Department and died from the toxic smoke. The EPA administrator said it was safe despite other agencies telling her it was not. 300 plus New York Police Department died from the smoke. I have some of our firemen here in the town that we live in Drumright, went there. I don't remember how many of them went, and it's one of those things that I know, but it's just not, I can't find it in my brain. But anyway, 2 of them have since died of cancer, and they really think it was linked to that. So sad. Max Smith, I just saw it. Okay. 90% of the FBI in this country were pulled from their assignments in order to find Osama bin Laden cells in America. There were none. Yeah. Cricket Cinema, it's good to see you too. Fiona, it's good to see you. Cajun Mama. She says, I was working as a police officer when Pan Am flight crashed in Kenner, Louisiana, outside of New Orleans. That day I will remember forever. Isn't it something? These days, where there's those events, we don't ever forget them. I mean,
All right.
it's Mixed Mandy McGee says, I didn't get to message you, but I was near the Pentagon that day. Wow. I can't imagine. I imagine that it's hard for you on every anniversary. So it looks like that's the end of my chat so far. So do either one of you have anything else that you want to add to this before we go ahead and go? Any closing thoughts?
Don't forget to subscribe to Scientology The Real News.
Absolutely. That video came out amazing. It looks like it was done by a big production company. And I mean, it really does. It looks very, very professional.
It was professional. Not my doing, but it was professional. Kelly
It came out really good.
Kelly Copters.
She
is something else. That girl.
Yeah.
My only thing is I hope that we can take this day and remember not just those that passed, but how we came together, no matter what kind of stuff we believed in or whatever, but how we came together in the backside of that. That's more important.
I miss that so bad with the division that we've got in this country politically right now. I just want to shake all of us, myself included. I just wanted like this somehow to shake the world, but not with a terrorist attack, please God. But
No.
I wish that we would all just like take a minute and think about it. And the fact that schools aren't talking about it anymore really upsets me. They need to talk about it. It needs to be talked about. But there's so many events that we don't talk about, even like there was things that I didn't know what it was whenever, I got out of school. I didn't know what things were. And I've studied a lot. It reminds me of Reese Quibell. She in Scientology, there's a lot of stuff that she didn't know. She didn't go to school. She didn't go to high school and stuff. She didn't learn about history. She doesn't know about geography and all of that. And so she's learning it a little bit now. And I kind of feel like that too, because when she talks about it, I'm like, Reese, there's a lot of us out there that didn't learn a lot of stuff that we should. And it just breaks my heart. And yet here we are. These high school kids now, they're not learning about this. So it's like we just keep repeating that and repeating it. And we need to take our history very seriously. I think that other countries take their history much more seriously than we do. It's like their buildings, they spend so much in their buildings and everything, and make these buildings that last hundreds of years, and we throw up all these little metal buildings everywhere. And it's just, I don't know, it just bothers me that I wish that we could get back to being a close nation. And I think that that's going to have to be with educating our kids and really educating them, because there's so many adults that think that the Democrats and Republicans are so far apart when really we're not. I mean, the extreme of either side are, the extreme, but the average person, we're really not that far apart. And yet we are so far apart, if that makes any sense. And I wish that we would take these things like, this terrorist attack, the Oklahoma City bombing, all the wars, and everything, all the tragedies. We need to study that stuff. Our kids need to remember it. And I think that if they remembered all that, if they studied all that, it would bring us closer. They would feel a sense of unity with each other and not be so worried about red or blue. And
Our politicians benefit from division, right?
absolutely,
They win votes and they
both
win
sides.
communities. So exactly. Politics has become very, very tribal, and especially with the money influence, right? The big money
Absolutely.
influence on both sides. I'm not picking on
Yeah,
one
I'm not
side.
picking on either one.
And I think that's that's a big, big, big problem for us as a society. It's a tribalism, and the fact that they have to sow division
Mhm.
because that's what wins them. Racism puts them in power, and like I said, that applies across the board. I'm trying to
Yep.
be very bipartisan and not non-political as I can while talking about politics. So that's my
Absolutely.
concern.
But I think that it is political, because the whole deal with how people reacted to this, to this whole terrorist attack and the whole going to war and everything became very political. And although we stood together for a while with it, it also became a divisive thing the further out we got from it. And so I think, and it was
Revised
based on
history.
politics. Yeah.
Right. We got a revised history of this is what we're doing. I mean, we went in the military thinking we were doing for one thing, we were fighting something else, and it got confusing, being like this.
It
I thought
absolutely did. And it started
so.
dividing people. It really
Yes.
did. It really, really did.
Yeah.
Fiona says, I remember the coverage on TV here, and a reporter was heard saying to her cameraman, she said that the day the whole world stood still and held its breath, a day no one will ever be able to forget, the world stopped and collected its breath. Sometimes I think we just need, I don't want another terrorist attack. I'm not saying that, but I think we just need to take a breath. I think that the world needs a breath. Between all the political division and the COVID and, everything else, anyway. But anyway, guys, I think I'm going to close here. I'm starting to get tired and I might start crying in a minute. So, thank you so much, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to my chat. I still say I have the best channel and the best chat on YouTube and the best friends. So I just thank you so much for being here and telling your stories. And I'm just honored. So I'm going to go. I love you guys. I love all of you. All of you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. I will see you guys later.